Hello and welcome to episode 282 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week, a new study says Canadian Conservatives are actually for climate action. So find something else to argue about at the Canadian Thanksgiving dinner table next Monday. Like, should the new American $1 coin be called the loonie because Trump is on it? Canada, we have a $1 coin with a loon on it, but it's for a different kind of loon.
On our last bonus episode, we reported that renewable power generation surpassed coal for the first time in Australia. We have now learned that renewables have surpassed coal globally for the first time. Said a spokesperson for coal.
It just goes on and on. Nigeria, the oil capital of Africa, is going big on solar. Oil made Nigeria rich, diesel made it loud, and now the sun's about to make it quiet and affordable. Like your mama.
Oh, snap! After years of successful policy, the air in Santiago, Chile is getting cleaner every day. We now travel back in time to 30 years ago, when a spokesperson for Santiago said this.
All that and more on this edition of the Clean Energy Show.
All right, James, it's time for my favorite thing on the show. James, it is time to play Jeopardy!
For the second day in a row, we have a new champion. It's Curtis Bogetti. Now he's from Canada. He won over $30,000 yesterday, and as a result, he told us he's very excited about the current favorable exchange rate.
Your house is smart, 800.
For powering up this, like a Prologue or Ioniq, a smart charger can wait until power is cheapest. Those are both electric vehicles, EVs.
Ooh.
Yeah, once again. But, you know, the tricky part of Jeopardy is trying to parse the clue, quickly, because they're giving you the answer and you have to phrase it as a question. And so there's often a confusing question
Did you
involved
get
there.
it?
So I found that question quite confusing. It's a very simple answer.
Did you
it's
get
just
it?
electric vehicles. No, I didn't get it. I was still thinking about it.
Oh.
I was still confused by what they were asking for.
All right. Well, Brian, you and I, we often tell our listeners and try to explain where the unusual place we are podcasting from. We are in southern Canada on the North American plains in a small city of 250,000 people. And occasionally, our province of Saskatchewan comes up in things in the world and has significance, like Elon Musk lived here before he went to the States.
That's right.
And, things like that. Well, I was listening to Mark Maron's podcast last night, and he had Matt Groening on, the creator of The Simpsons and Futurama and other things, and, of course, Life in Hell, the comic strip, and other things. It turns out his dad, who's named Homer, was born in Canada.
He's got a really interesting story because he grew up in Kansas. He was born in Canada because his parents were Mennonites and they were pacifists and they didn't want him to be an American citizen. So they drove up to Canada so he would not be born in the U.S. and he would not have to serve in the military.
Right.
And so he was born in Saskatchewan, and then they came back and lived in western Kansas, where he did not speak English. He spoke German till the age of 5. The family did not have a car. They had a wagon, horse and wagon.
So if you're wondering where Homer was born, right here in Saskatchewan, Canada, where Brian and I live.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Homer Simpson is from here, technically, sort of.
Sort of, yes. Well, he goes on to say that his dad was working in the Red Cross in World War II and helping Japanese internment camp people. And then they came and said, you have to be in the military or you're going to prison. So he ended up being in the military anyway.
Yeah. And Kansas is in some ways a lot like Saskatchewan. They have a lot of wheat there in Kansas, and also Minnesota. There's a lot of cross traffic between Minnesota and Saskatchewan, Kansas and Saskatchewan, that kind of thing.
So in air quality news this week, I bought a second air quality monitor. This one is from Amazon Alexa. The Prime days are on, and Amazon Alexa products go on sale before the Prime days.
Oh, yeah.
So I couldn't resist. It was $59.99. And I have one mounted outside now in a inverted plastic container mounted under a raised pool deck that's about 4 feet off the ground. I've drilled some little holes in it to make sure the air can circulate through. I'm going to use this to make sure that monitor is getting all the, it's not getting blocked by the VOCs, the volatile organic compounds from pollution in the industry here from the oil refinery, from the steel mill. And I'm also going to be able to put it in my house to see, okay, the VOCs are up outdoors. Are they getting into my house?
Right.
And, because there's lots of VOCs in the house when you cook, when you do pass gas, and different things you could do that would set off, anything would set off this in the house. Outside, I'm finding, no, it's just industry. Because I correlate it with the wind tightly, and it's always, okay, the wind is blowing from that place, or it's the other place. It's always one of the two, or there's no wind, which seems like it's a rare event, but at night it does calm down and just sort of wafts in from these places. And I'm finding that, Brian, it's bad things out there all the time, almost all the time, not all the time, but almost all the time.
Yeah. From
one place or another. And I should not live here.
And so this is technically an indoor air quality thing, but you've made a little shelter for it so you can use it outdoors.
I'm hoping I can use it outdoors. It does get very cold here, so we'll see how it does with that.
Oh, right. That could be a problem.
I think one of the important things is keeping it dry. And I do have the expensive air quality station, which is out there and weatherproof, obviously, and doing a great job. And I'm starting to see things on there that deviate from other places in the city.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to, it's a long process to figure this out, but this is what the whole project is for. Our listeners helped raise money for the expensive air quality monitor. And now I've got this. I'm also going to be able to take it around. So if there's a steady, moderate wind from one direction, I might go to my car and it's powered by USB and just take some readings some places to see. And if I get a reading, a mile away from the refinery, I'm going to go in the direction of the wind that is going and see what it is, further down and see if it shows up. Because, it's a bit complicated because I have to have baseline things. I have to go when the wind is not from the direction to make sure there's no VOCs there. Mm-hmm. I was at my medical clinic yesterday. We had a rare west wind. So it was blowing in things from the city yards, the yards for the city that makes asphalt. So they have oil there. So I was getting inside the building as well. Bad things.
Wow.
So I know they don't want that there. But, I've been wondering about the geothermal plant in Regina or in Saskatchewan. It was started in 2020. It was supposed to be online by 2022. It's now 3 years past due, and I've reached out to them. They've not gotten back to me, but Mark Hislop, the energy journalist who currently lives on Vancouver Island in Canada, had an interview with their CEO yesterday or the day before, and I got really bad vibes from it, and I don't think that... Basically, they're saying they need more money, and it's going to be costlier. They now want to generate more electricity than they did before. They think they can.
Yeah.
But the brine, they're using brine from the geothermal, and it's very nasty stuff, and they have to line their pipes, so it's going to cost more.
Yeah.
And they think that it'll be worthwhile because it's 24/7. It's going to take as long as a freaking nuclear plant, for God's sake. I mean, it's really, it's considered experimental, and it shouldn't be. It should be it's not something that's working as well. And this is traditional geothermal. It's not the newfangled deep geothermal that they're talking about, using oil rig technology to dig deeper anywhere and have access to heat.
Yeah, but they have, however deep they're going, they have access to very hot water, and they can use that to generate electricity. And this has been done, I believe, in other countries, but just, not here in Canada so far. And it's probably the brine that's holding them up. It sounds like a very caustic brine that's difficult to deal with.
There's lots of geothermal in California near the Salton Sea in the interior of California that is dealing with salty brine too, but they're also, they're up and running though. I mean, is there something they should have learned from that? I don't know. I came across something I've been looking for a long time, and that is how much solar our province has, because we don't have any, and I've compared it to the Netherlands before, who has less solar capacity than us and it's actually, we'll get to that in the lightning round, a ridiculous amount of solar. Yeah, so we've got currently, they're building a 100 megawatt farm somewhere, which is quite a bit of electricity, powers a lot of homes.
Yeah, that's starting to get decent, yeah.
But right now, they have 3 10 megawatt farms, which aren't that big. They're as small as they come. And we talked a couple of weeks ago about a fourth one, which was supposed to be online adjacent to the northeast part of the city here, and that disappeared without an announcement, without the media looking into it, but we broke the story. If anyone cares, and I don't think they do, but it's out there. So yeah, they've got 3 10 megawatt solar farms, and That's 30 megawatts if you do your math, Brian. And I know it's been a while. But customer-generated solar capacity is 67 megawatts.
Wow. More than double.
More than double from people like you and me with solar on our roof. And, there's probably some First Nations that have a little bit bigger farms. There's farmers that have larger, arrays that they probably mostly use because farmers will use a lot more electricity, especially if you're heating, grain, the crop that goes into your bin, if you try and drying the grain. Natural gas and diesel is often used for that. But yeah, it's embarrassing. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. They're saying it's not possible. We can't do it, but the customers can. And there's not even great incentives to do it anymore locally, at least in our jurisdiction.
Yeah, no, the fact that, homeowner rooftop is, 67 megawatts is impressive because they sort of made the program worse a few years ago and made it less profitable to put up your own solar. So, but even with that, it's beating what the utility is doing. All right, this is from the BBC. Renewable energy overtook coal as the world's leading source of electricity in the first half of this year. A historic first, according to new data from the global energy think tank Ember. Electricity demand is growing around the world, but the growth in solar and wind was so strong it met 100% of the extra electricity demand, even helping drive a slight decline in coal and gas use. Developing countries, especially China, led the clean energy charge. Richer nations, including the US and the EU, actually relied more than before on fossil fuels for their electricity generation. And of course, we know that coal is one of the major contributors to global warming. It was still the world's largest individual source of energy generation in 2024. And this is a position it has held for more than 50 years, according to the IEA. So even though China is still adding to its fleet of coal-powered stations, we've talked about that before, we tend to talk about the solar and wind that China puts up, but they are still building coal because they're just trying to do everything as quickly as possible and grow demand. But they remain way ahead in clean energy growth, adding more solar and wind capacity than the rest of the world combined. This enabled the growth in renewable energy generation in China to outpace the rising electricity demand, and then it helped them reduce their overall fossil fuel generation by 2%. So even with massive demand growth for electricity, they managed to cut their fossil fuels by 2%. India experienced a slower electricity demand growth and also added significant new solar and wind capacity. So India also cut back a little bit on coal and gas. The US and the EU saw the opposite trend, unfortunately. And these are the kind of stats I love. Solar prices have fallen 99.9% since 1975, which is
wow,
kind of insane. Of course, a single solar panel used to be crazy expensive. Pakistan, we've talked about before, they're importing solar panels capable of generating 17 gigawatts of solar in 2024. That was double the previous year and equivalent roughly to a third of the country's current electricity generation capacity. Pakistan adding solar quickly and in a very big way. And of course, we've talked about Africa a lot as well, and that kind of segues into what you want to talk about.
Yeah, Europe is going big, and it's economics. We'll remind people that, if you have the opportunity to put up power generation, there's an incentive to go with something like solar that is very cheap these days and getting cheaper and still getting cheaper. It's not done getting cheaper. And I think that they're going to improve the panels. It sounds like there's improvements that will come. We don't know when or how, but the individual panel that you talked about, when we were children, being very expensive, well, it also didn't put out much electricity, and they sort of, they judge these things about how much per watt or something like that you can put out. So these old panels didn't put out much. Well, that's going to change again. The panels we have today are a little bit better than they were a few years ago. And again, we're looking at, there's a huge incentive now to improve these things because, if you improve a panel in 1975, who cares? Like you get to write it up in a science journal and publish your information. But now it is, if you can get more out of a solar panel, more out of a square foot of these panels on a roof or on a field or in a desert, it's amazing. So I expect improvements on that. Nigeria is going big on solar, and we have touched on this before, but I wanted to go again because Yale Environment has an article on it, and I find it fascinating. You'll remember that Nigeria is the largest oil producer in Africa. Now, we produce oil here in Saskatchewan, not as much as next door in Alberta, and that has completely ruined us.
Yeah.
We're on renewables. We've got this great high, paying off energy. Let's not change anything. But 4 in 10 Nigerians aren't connected to the power grid. Even those with grid access face constant blackouts. So, yeah, you can't. It's kind of like Pakistan, even those with the grid access, it's down a lot of the time. And it's hard if you've got a factory or a business. Many households and businesses rely on noisy, expensive diesel generators. And as we've mentioned on the show before, the government recently removed a long-standing fuel subsidy. So they were subsidizing fuel so that people could make their electricity and keep the economy running. Then they said they suddenly took it away, just instantly took it away. So that's kind of a hardship for people because, it's hard enough for a lot of people to be able to afford the upfront costs of the solar. But and then they had to instantly find a way to do it. So diesel prices have skyrocketed. They're up 84% in just 1 year. So remember, they're using that diesel not just for transportation, but for powering their homes or businesses. And it's a major expense. Solar panel prices, especially from China, they keep falling. And the result is more Nigerians are switching from diesel directly to solar. So that's quite the shift, at least in the air you breathe. Because diesel is a diesel generator is constantly running outside your home or business is going to make things bad for you and your neighbors. It's going to shorten your lives. According to the think tank Ember, a solar panel system in Nigeria now pays for itself in about 6 months. And then, Brian, after that, it's free. It's like buying a diesel generator that you have to pay for in 6 months, and then the diesel just pours in from the sun.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make a stink and doesn't make a noise. As you know, solar panels don't make noise.
Notoriously quiet.
And if they do, something's wrong. And that's a massive incentive for homeowners and businesses. Those who can afford the upfront costs are rushing to install rooftop solar. In rural areas, entire villages, as we said before, are setting up community solar. That is basically like a little array of solar panels that maybe is in a little tiny patch of land, and it powers the whole village, and they sort of share that. And sometimes there's battery systems. International development groups are going big on that. We talked about Mr. Beast trying to do that as well, the YouTuber who has a philanthropy. It's helping people who were never on the grid get reliable electricity for the first time in their lives, and that helps the economy, and it helps people to thrive. So it's a big change. It's helping them get out of poverty. Solar panels, which is a story that I always love. Imports of Chinese solar panels into Nigeria jumped by 2/3 between June 24 and June 25. 2/3 is pretty significant growth. So it's on the upswing. And, once it gets proven to everybody, then things kind of take off. Unfortunately, we have to prove it to people here for some reason. That's a clear sign the solar transition is accelerating, and this isn't happening just in Nigeria, as you said. Similar growth is being seen in Zambia, Brazil, and as we've said many times, Pakistan. High fuel prices in Pakistan and subsidy cuts also led to a solar boom, and it's become so common there that solar panels, as we said before, are part of wedding dowries.
Yeah.
So here's a toaster and a solar panel. And I don't know. I don't know if toasters are big in Pakistan, but I thought that was a funny thing. I always give coffee grinders as wedding gifts. So Nigeria's solar revolution shows how economics can drive clean energy, even in oil-rich nations. Are you listening, Canada? When fossil fuel prices rise and renewables become cheaper, people adopt quicker and quicker. And it's no longer a luxury to have solar. It's becoming a necessity across the developing world, which is, it's just an amazing thing that solar not only cleans the air, but it all changes people's lives.
Yeah, and of course, it does work better with batteries if you can afford the batteries. But if you're not even connected to the grid, which many Nigerians are not, put up the solar panels and just use the power while the sun is shining is going to be a massive improvement over not being connected to the grid and not having electricity at all. So this stuff will only get better from here. I'm assuming that they will, eventually add more batteries and things like that. All right, this is Santiago, Chile. The story is from The Guardian. A 30-year effort driven by long-term policies is finally paying off in Santiago. But the challenge, they say, is far from over. So for nearly 30 years, Chile's capital has been experimenting in how to reduce air pollution. In the last few years, the work has at last begun paying dividends. 2025 was the third best year in terms of the fewest hours of critical pollution episodes since they started keeping track in 97. Over the last decade, hours of exposure to high levels of pollution fell by 66%, which according to the environment minister means that 7.5 million residents of the metropolitan region are breathing cleaner air. And it's not just a bump. This is a sustained trend, the result of long-term policies such as modernizing public transportation, implementing vehicle restrictions, banning wood-burning heaters in the winter. But experts say the challenge is far from over. Fine particulate matter, PM 2.5, has been decreasing in the cold months. Another pollution, tropospheric ozone, has gained ground in the summer, a scenario worsened by the climate crisis. So a lot of the problem with Santiago is really just the geography of it. It's often compared to a pressure cooker, and this is just part of its geography. The Andes form a barrier that makes horizontal dispersion of the pollutants difficult. It's just, the wind just doesn't have anywhere to blow it quite often, so it tends to settle and just get really, really bad. So here's some of the things that they've done. Vehicle restrictions. During alerts, cars with license plates ending in certain digits are banned from circulation. You can't drive them. During pre-emergencies, the restrictions expand, affecting more digits of license plates and including green seal vehicles, electric or hybrid, and gasoline or diesel cars meeting Euro 5 or 6 standards. In emergencies, traffic is limited for most vehicles. And there's a journalist in Santiago that describes herself as absolutely compliant with the law, that not everybody does comply, and they do have to sometimes hand out tickets to people. Her car, which was manufactured before 2010, must be off the road 1 day a week between May and August. Driving it on restricted days can result in a fine of about £125. Primarily, it's for economic reasons, but also to contribute to cleaner air, says this journalist. But the most interesting thing in the story to me is really this whole program has been a victim of its own success. They noted an unexpected consequence of all this, the normalization of pollution. 20 years ago, pollution levels were so severe they overwhelmed hospitals in winter. Today, critical episodes have fallen so much that pollution is no longer a public discussion in Santiago. This makes advancing further measures difficult. They want to also electrify homes, but the air's gotten cleaner, so people don't see it as an emergency anymore.
Wow.
I'm sure this is happening in other places in the world, and I always like to bring up, the United States and California and Los Angeles in the 1970s had notoriously terrible pollution from all the vehicles. Imagine how much more polluting the vehicles from the 1970s were, and LA is such a car-centric city. But over the years, the LA air has gotten much, much better. So, it's easy to see where it just doesn't seem like an emergency anymore. If LA still had the same pollution it had in the 70s, I think Americans might be more interested in doing something about pollution.
Yeah, they would have banned combustion vehicles if they had they would just said, no, we're done. It's not ready to 2030, 35. We're done now. Yeah.
I mean, imagine all the health consequences if we still had that 1970s air pollution in LA. But I don't know. This is a problem, I think, in a lot of places. I, keep thinking the forest fire smoke here in Canada is going to sort of force people to do something and think about doing things differently. But, so far, the answer to that is no.
Yeah. Well, California is still a leader. I mean, I can't speak for California. We got listeners there. Give us an email, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. But it seems like there's still a memory from that. Yeah. Because I still have a memory from that. Yeah. That's why I'm here, Brian, is watching Los Angeles freeways on the news when I was a young lad.
Yeah.
We had the news on in our house, and that made an impact. I mean, wouldn't it be great if we could have something that didn't do that?
Yeah.
And many decades later, we now do, and they're affordable for the most part, especially when you consider the price of ownership of these vehicles, and there's nothing wrong with them.
And that movie from the 80s, To Live and Die in LA, I will never forget the shots from that movie. There's fantastic cinematography in that movie, but there's all kinds of shots of, LA cityscape with that terrible pollution. And it looks kind of cool on film. It gives you a nice sort of red glow to everything. but you don't want to breathe that.
But I went to Joshua Tree National Park in around 2018 or so, and there was a lookout up on a very high point, which you drove up kind of like a mini mountain.
Yeah.
And the lookout looked west, southwest, something like that. And the little placard there said, you're looking at pollution blowing in from LA, because there's a sort of a channel in the mountains, and the normal breezes that come in from the ocean. And we felt a long way from LA, like we were in nature. We were in a national park. Yeah. And suddenly, so that still exists. I mean, there's industry and other things that are not talking just about combustion vehicles, but it's a large population base, which makes pollution from all kinds of things. Even inhalers make pollution, like asthma inhalers, which I'll get to later. So new research on the views on climate in Canada has me surprised, Brian Stockton, because if you live here, you might think conservatives hate the climate and maybe don't even believe it's real. At least their representatives that they vote for, the politicians that get into office, seem to certainly feel that way. We have an election, and then they don't come up with hardly any policy at all that seems worthwhile. And there's a political backlash, which they effectively used, the conservative politicians in Canada, to get rid of the carbon pricing. And that's I'm seeing it all the time, the effect of that. Like our city wants to cancel our electric bus plans because diesel's now cheaper.
Right.
And, Brett Dalter, when we interviewed him on Saskatchewan Decarbonizing, he said that there's no carbon price on natural gas anymore. So it's now cheaper to use natural gas and coal. We don't have to worry about going to solar and wind. Well, that's the whole point of the damn carbon pricing.
Yeah.
And plus, it's not free. There is a cost to polluting, and the polluters get away with it. But a lot of Canadian conservatives actually do care about climate change. Their political leaders know, but this is from Reclimate. The survey was done nationally in the summer of 2024. And the questions were, to what extent do you believe governments in Canada should do more to address climate change? The second question was, to what extent do you support taxing companies based on their carbon emissions? And the third question was, to what extent do you support replacing fossil fuels with renewable energies? And the research shows conservatives in Canada really aren't against climate action as a whole. More conservatives support climate action than oppose it, which is interesting.
Yeah.
They pose the question, well, if that's the case, why aren't we talking about it? Why don't we talk about it with our conservative friends and relatives? We live in a pretty conservative place, so I don't know if our relatives I got lots of rural relatives and lots of Albertan relatives. I don't know if it's a great thing to bring up, but I know some of them are pro-climate. There's a real mix of opinions. It's not just left is right, apparently. So why some conservatives still say no? Some conservatives care more about keeping the economy growing, even if it means using fossil fuels. So they're very worried about becoming poor,
Yeah, because in the past, fossil fuel use was often directly connected to your GDP. Like the more you were burning, the greater your GDP. That's not necessarily the case anymore, but that's what people know about and believe.
And certainly the politicians in Western Canada and the oil petrol places like us will kind of, I think they still have that opinion. So others don't trust scientists or the government to handle the problem. Man, if you can't trust scientists, who can you trust?
Yeah. And who else would you trust?
Panhandlers?
Yeah, should we get the panhandlers to handle this?
Drug dealers? Who do you want to give the responsibility to if you don't want to trust the scientists? So many people have raised doubts about science and scientists, and they're out to get us, and it's a lie. Well, it's a problem of our time, and it's sad because it affects what we talk about on the show here. And some really just like liberals. They just dislike liberals. That's the problem. They dislike liberals, which affects how they see climate policy. So if you hate liberals, you can't like climate because that would just make the liberals happy.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. So feelings about politics can shape how people think about the environment. The study found something called affective polarization. That's when people like their own political side and really dislike the other side. Well, gee, hadn't noticed that.
Well, yeah, welcome to 2025.
Conservatives who strongly dislike liberals are way less likely to support climate action. And those who don't feel that anger or distrust are more supportive. So it's not just about facts, it's also about emotion and identity. And if conservative leaders actually listen to their conservative voters, they probably realize that more climate solutions are wanted, and maybe they should go for that. And our politicians here in Saskatchewan are outright cowards.
Yeah.
You're the worst cowards there are. We learned that from our interview with Brett Alder. They don't want to upset anybody. They don't even want to install an EV charger. They own the Crown Corporation that has the power utility, and the power utility could sell its own product, but that would upset somebody, And then they've come out on some, social, value stuff that is really crap to, because they don't want to lose any voters on the far right. So they just want to keep power, and they're very scared about doing anything. And so are the people who are trying to oppose them and come into power as well. It's just nothing is ever going to get done if you're a coward.
Yeah.
You've heard it here first from James Whittingham, co-host of the Clean Energy Show.
And people around here do have an emotional connection to oil and gas, which is such a weird thing. I never would have thought that was possible. It always just seemed like a necessary evil to me. But people around here, they have a genuine, it's part of our identity, and people have an emotional connection to it. All right, so you can contact us. We love to hear from you. cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. You can leave us a voicemail, speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. And of course, you can join our Patreon page and get access there to some additional content.
Join our Patreon today as a paying member and get access to our exclusive Patreon episodes, which we had a great one last week. You can now support us for as little as $1 a month, and some people do. I want to give a shout out to those people because we once a month we give a verbal shout out to people who are in the Clean Club and Quest, but there's lots of people who aren't, and I would be one of those people if I was supporting our podcast. I thank you all in the supporter levels and those even who aren't supporting us financially but are signed up for an account, and you can see all of our content there. We have bonus content on there, additional content, including when Brian had to have a pipe fixed in his backyard. A natural gas line got cut by a contractor.
Yeah.
That was it was fun to look at the pictures. It's one thing to hear the story, but to have the picture, the pictures are 1,000 words there. You also get ad-free episodes, early access to our episodes before the public, behind-the-scenes material, private updates on anything that explodes at Brian's house. And coming up next is the lightning round. It's time for the lightning round.
The lightning round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and transportation.
Japan's new leader is going all in on nuclear energy while reducing emphasis on readily available renewables like solar. They have pushed to accelerate the development of advanced nuclear technologies like fusion, and has previously called for making the country 100% energy sufficient by developing next-generation reactors. Well, hopefully that works, but we need to decarbonize now. And of course, Japan's an island. They have a special situation there, and they've shut down some of their nuclear, and it's a whole thing. So their pro-nuclear stance would continue the policies of previous administrations, which have pushed to build new units and restart reactors idled after the 2011 Fukushima disaster. That story is from Bloomberg. From the IEEAFA, as of March 2025, about 10% of households across Puerto Rico had rooftop solar, representing a 5-fold increase since 2021. These are big gains for reliable and affordable renewables. They've made this despite political headwinds. So there's a lot of chatter about that now on the internet. Like, you can be political and hate renewables for no legitimate reason, but the economics sometimes take over. And of course, the actual benefit to Puerto Ricans are an unreliable power grid, especially during hurricane season.
Yeah, unreliable grids will always lead you to clean energy.
Pope Leo the 14th, is he the 14th?
Yeah.
Renewed the Vatican's vow to remain the forefront of the movement to halt global warming in his first major climate speech. The Pope said citizens need to take action and an active role in political decision-making at national, regional, and local levels to mitigate the damage done to the environment. I agree with the Pope on this. And he stated that the most effective solutions won't come from individuals, but from major political decisions. Agree with that. The national and international level. Amen to that, Pope. And Your Holiness, if you're listening, and I assume you may be, we'd love to have you on the show sometime, so give us a shout, or have your people give us a shout.
We're Pope-friendly here at the Clean Energy Show.
For some reason. Volkswagen's U.S. EV sales explode. 231% growth year over year.
Wow.
So, way to go,
really
Volkswagen.
Something. Yeah.
Time for a CS Fast Fact. An average of 1 to 2 Starlink satellites falls back to Earth every day. Reason why I mention that is because we talked about Starlink before on the show, back when they launched, so to speak.
Yeah.
And with all the other low Earth satellites coming, there's going to be 50,000 of them soon. Jeez. You know, I spend a lot of time in my bedroom with these big windows on the solar house here facing south.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, there's like a flash of darkness from the sun.
What?
And I don't know if it's a plane or a bird or if it's a low Earth satellite, but every once in a while, there's this sort of blink of the sun, like blinking your eyelids, just very briefly gets somewhat darker.
It's a bird. It's a plane. It's a low Earth satellite.
Well, apparently when they get all these up, because China's doing it too, there could be 5 per day falling. So cover your head, Brian. For God's sake, wear a construction helmet or something. 40% of Cadillacs sold in the third quarter of this year in the United States were, guess what? Battery electric vehicles were Cadillacs. So Cadillac is going strong, and that segment is buying them, which is nice. They're good cars, by the way. I think GM has a lot of experience in it, and I think they're getting a lot of things right. Studies published Monday in the journal JAMA found that medication inhalers for asthma are substantial contributors to planet-warming pollution.
What?
It's not the medicine itself. It's the HFAs, the hydrofluorocane propellant.
Wow.
Propellants in them are not good.
This is kind of like in the old days when, was it back in the 70s or the 80s, we realized that, chlorofluorocarbons from like aerosols.
Yeah.
But we phased out the use of that thing. So, spray cans now don't do that anymore. Spray cans now don't contribute to the decline of the ozone layer, but I guess not in inhalers.
Yeah. I don't know if they can work on something different, but they probably think that a little there and there for an asthma sufferer is not going to be a problem, but they add up. 33.7% of all vehicles sold in Norway in September were not electric, they were Teslas.
Yeah.
Which were electric.
Yeah.
So that's actually all vehicles, Brian.
Yeah.
Like if that was Toyota or anyone else, that would be significant, but it's pretty, like Teslas have really taken off there. I think they've built trust, with the reliability and the service and the value proposition for those vehicles. This summer, record-breaking cloudbursts fueled widespread flooding in Pakistan, destroying up to half the seasonal harvest. Rainfall in the region is growing ever more extreme, scientists say, and climate change is the root cause. And I complain about smoke, but I mean, these guys are losing their livelihood if half the crops are gone from rain.
Yeah, not great.
That's from Yale Environment. Lloyd's Register, the shipping advisory firm, updates its guidance for safe fuel cell integration on ships. So we talk about maybe ships are a polluter. What are we going to do? Mm-hmm. Well, hydrogen-powered fuel cells, like hydrogen-powered cars on a larger scale, might be a solution. So they've actually come up with guidance for safe fuel cell integration on ships, providing ship owners and builders with technical, regulatory, and safety frameworks to enable cleaner maritime power. And Brian, I think that's an interesting development because it seems like the shipping industry is ready to move now, not later, but now they're getting ready to decarbonize.
It's happening. We talked about Viking has a cruise ship that's going to run on hydrogen that's going to have zero emissions. So, it's not going to be quick, but, shipping is a huge polluter.
So as you've said before, solar was already at 8.8% of global electricity generation in the first half of 25. That's more than doubling since 2021. Like in 4 years, the whole world has doubled the solar it did 4 years prior. And that rate is not slowing down currently. Everyone says, well, it's got to slow down sometime in China. It's time for a CS Fast Fact. Alberta produces 4 million barrels of oil per day. That's the province next to us in Canada, home of the famous oil sands. Norway produces 2 million barrels a day, so half as much as Alberta, although Alberta used to be around the same. They've recently upped their amount of oil. And Alberta's population is 5 million people, and Norway's population is 5.5 million people. Are you seeing a similarity here, Brian? It's very similar.
Quite interesting.
Norway has put aside $1.74 trillion now for their wealth fund.
Yeah.
They're taking oil revenues and putting it away because they know that oil is not going to always be there. And they want to be rich after the oil goes away. So they're being smart about it. So now it's up to $1.74 trillion. It was 1.3 a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
That's $300,000 per citizen.
Yeah.
I should move to Norway.
I'm thinking about it. I have, Norwegian relatives. I might be able to get citizenship in Norway.
Well, fine. Let's go. If we have listeners, I know we have listeners in Norway. Give us a shout out. We're looking for new friends in Norway because we don't want to go there and not have friends. We got to have friends. So,
well, sure.
Alberta's equivalent fund only has about $21 billion to it. So that's a tiny, 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 tiny fraction of that. And I expect that piggy bank to be broken into because it has in the past and it will be in the future.
Yeah.
And once oil revenues decline, then
they're going to need that. So, we talked about this a few years ago. I was trying to figure out, why did Norway get this right and we in Canada get this so wrong? And I think one of the root issues is that in Norway, resources are a federal proposition, but in Canada, it's provincial. So decades ago, when the oil companies were setting up in Canada, the provinces were competing against each other. All the headquarters for the major oil companies used to be here in Saskatchewan, where we are, and they got tempted to Alberta, and there is probably more oil in Alberta, but they all set up shop in Alberta. So, we have this problem where the provinces have to compete with each other for the business of the oil companies, and it's just led to this situation where, we're just not taking a big enough piece of the pie like they are in Norway.
And finally this week, we have a new winner for the largest floating offshore wind turbine.
Wow.
So, you know how I like to announce the new largest wind turbines?
Yeah.
Because they keep freaking me out.
Yeah, and this isn't the biggest overall, but this is the biggest for floating.
Floating, most of the biggest wind turbines are mounted to the shallow surface if you have a shelf off your coast. Mm-hmm. Well, this one is floating, and the floating ones were tended to be smaller for reasons that you can probably understand.
Yeah.
But it's 16 megawatts.
Wow.
Which used to be the record for the non-floating one, not that long ago. Maybe actually when we started the show, and it's unveiled in China. And this system will generate about 44.7 million kilowatt hours of electricity per year. This is from one floating wind turbine, which means if it's floating, you can put it anywhere. You don't need to have that shallow shelf of off your continental coast there. And there's some places like, the west coast of North America, California and British Columbia and Canada, we don't have that luxury to put the wind turbines into the ground, which is why they don't really exist yet. But now they've got one that is big, floats, and you can put it anywhere. Japan has the same problem, although they're probably not going to care about renewables anymore, but maybe they will a little bit. The system will generate a lot of electricity that's enough to power 4,000 average U.S. households with this one little fan blade sticking out in the ocean floating.
Turbine. That's amazing.
And you could put them further away. You could put them anywhere you want, right? You don't need to put them in sight. So that's an issue too.
And put them where the wind is. All right, that's our show for this week. You can contact us cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. Around social media, we're Clean Energy Pod. And of course, that Patreon we love to talk about, patreon.com/Clean Energy Pod. And there's a merch store if you want to get some Clean Energy Show merch. And of course, remember to hit the follow or subscribe button on your post podcast app.
Your post podcast app? Is there such a thing now?
Yeah, and so that's where you'll get the new episodes every week.
Thank you to all our Patreon Clean Club executive members, Green Bastard Brent Routley, and thanks to all of you for supporting climate-positive content. We'll see you again in 7 days.
See you next week.